Welcome everybody to this episode of the Uncharted Sounds podcast. It's me, Martin. I'm joined by my good mate, Noel. How are you, Noel?
Very good, mate. Very good. Looking forward to this one very much.
All right, well, we'll get on to that. Before we do, though, what have you been listening to recently?
Well, I used to have it on CD, but I've actually managed to acquire it on vinyl now. And it's an album by the Redskins, their first album called Neither Washington Nor Moscow. And you know the album, don't you, I think?
I do. It's a great album.
Isn't it just?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Love it. Got some great songs on it.
What about yourself? What have you been listening to?
Yeah. Well, so actually, I've gone back in time a little bit as well. So Blondie had an album out called No Exit, and it was their comeback album after they got back together again. And it's the one that includes I think they had a number one with Maria. And they've just re-released it. And oh my goodness, it's got, for a comeback album, it's got so many great songs on it. So yeah, I've been listening to that, which has been brilliant.
Well, that's great. I mean, I saw them during that when they first released that at the Isle of Wight Festival. Actually, they played there. So
okay, all right, Noel. So who are we talking about today?
We're talking about Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine.
Once in a blue, your dreams come true if someone's looking out for you. So party unto, let's buy some booze, go downtown and get tattoos. But then go ahead and have a good cry. Do it now before you die. Soothe your temper and wash your eyes. Give your lungs some exercise. And then get your brush and we'll paint the town a lighter shade of grey and brown. And it won't mean a thing. And in round two we'll fight like Ali. By the end of the second round, we'll be singing you and this army are gonna stop us now.
Now we both love this band, but what's their story then?
Yeah, so Carter, or Carter USM, as they're also known, were a South London band formed around 1988, and they initially split 10 years later in 1998. And in that time, they achieved a #1 album. They headlined Glastonbury, and they sold over 1 million records. So it's really
Wow.
impressive.
Yeah.
So their kind of thing, their sound was pretty unique, I think. It layered thrashing guitars over backing tracks of samples, sequence basses, and drum machines. And the lyrics were really important as well. Always very funny, very pun-driven, rich in social commentary and clever wordplay. And the gigs, again, the other thing that stood out about them, the gigs were kind of a riot of blinding white light and crowd surfing. So there's a whole load of stuff going on, which really made them distinctive and quite exciting. And so they were formed by Jim Bob and Fruitbat. And for a long time, they were the two key guys in the band, or only guys in the band. Eventually, though, they became a six-piece. But the nucleus was always Jim Bob and Fruitbat, who brought the energy and enthusiasm to it. And later on, we'll be talking to...
I think we're going to be talking to Jim Bob.
We certainly are.
Which is particularly exciting for both of us.
It is.
All right, before we talk to Jim Bob then, tell us a little bit about them, a little bit about their history, their story.
Absolutely. So first of all, in terms of the names, now, born Jim Morrison, but known as Jim Bob, and still performs now as Jim Bob. The other main guy, Les Carter, his nickname is Fruitbat. I think that is a nickname from school. So throughout this, they both play guitars and vocals. If I mention Fruitbat or Les, it's the same person, interchangeable. Okay. Now, later on, there's other members, but I'll mention them as they come along and join the band at a different point in time. So originally, Jim Bob and Fruitbat played in an indie band called Jamie Wednesday, who released 2 singles, which are both great songs, by the way. And then what happened was that band was booked to do a charity gig at the Astoria in August 87. But actually, a lot of the other guys, or most of the other guys in the band, weren't able to make it. So they decided they'd carry on just the pair of them and fulfill the commitment of the gig. And they prepared a load of backing tracks. And the result of that went down so well that actually was the nucleus and the start of actually what became Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine. And then a year later, they released their first single called A Sheltered Life. And they started regularly gigging. And they also did support slots for Susie and the Banshees. The following year after that, 89, they saw the original release of a song which became much bigger on its second release. That's Sheriff Fat Man, it condemning the rise of cowboy landlords.
A granny farmer. He was infamous for 15 minutes and he appeared on Panorama. Then he somehow got himself on board the Starship Enterprise allowance scheme with a Prince of Wales award for pushing Valium and amphetamines. Behind Nicholas Van What's-His-Face at 6'6" and 100 tons, the undisputed king of the slums with more aliases than Klaus Barbie, the master butcher of Leon Seed, just about to take the stage, the one and only, hold the front page. Fat man's got something to sell to the capital's homeless, at the Crossroads Motel for the no-fixed aboders, where you can live life in style, you can sleep in a closet. And if you flash him a smile, he'll take your teeth as deposit. There's bats in the belfry, the windows are jammed, the toilets ain't healthy, he don't give a damn. Just chuckles and smiles, laughs like a madman, a born-again rap man. Here comes Sheriff Batman with his Valium and...
Yeah, that's one of their signature songs, isn't it, Sheriff Batman?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the first one I ever heard, and I remember watching the video and thinking, wow, being kind of knocked out a bit, you know. So yeah. In 1990, they released their debut album, 101 Damnations, on Big Cats Records, and that actually reached number 29 in the album charts, and it got a lot of praise for its songwriting. Now, talking about that, I saw an article in the Guardian newspaper describing their songs as barbed punk poetry of urban degradation and decay, which is a great way to sum it up, isn't it? The band, talking about the band's gigs, as we did earlier, the white lights and the stage diving and the moshing and so on. Now, a key part of their gigs was the crowd affectionately chanting at the larger-than-life lighting technician, John, who was known as Fat Beast. And I think he was happy to adopt that moniker. He went to the point that he actually played on it. He'd take his top off and stoke up the crowd and get them singing "You Fat Bastard" before they came on stage.
Right.
Which is hopefully one of the songs as we know.
Yeah.
And obviously he'd come on stage wearing a pair of shorts and sometimes even less. But then what was quite funny is that he then had to make a really sharp exit because he had to operate the lights. So got him going and got on with the job. So just to talk about Radio 1 for a moment. So Steve Lamacq and Joe Wiley were big fans and played their stuff all the time. But this is quite surprising because John Peel obviously was a big supporter of a lot of the bands we've spoken to. He wasn't keen on them, wasn't best happy with them, didn't love them, didn't hate them, but didn't love them. And he didn't offer them a Peel session.
Funny, isn't it? I wonder if that affected them in terms of their trajectory as a band, not having that Peel support.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I don't know. I mean, certainly they did a couple of other things that gave them a bit of infamy anyway, as you'll hear in the story, which definitely didn't hurt them. But just the next single after that, just to mention, was the really excellent "Anytime, Any Place, Anywhere," which tackled the rise of binge drinking. Now, moving on, in early '91, they signed to Rough Trade Records, and they released a single which was called "Blood Sport for All." Now, obviously, another clever play on words, because at the time the government had a campaign to get people to do exercise called Sport for All. So Blood Sport for All was about racism and bullying in the British Army, and it also had a bit of a swipe at the royal family actually. But it was released during the start of the Gulf War and got banned by the BBC. So again, talking about infamy, I would imagine that didn't do them any harm either. Every band we know of that had a record ban, I mean, look at Relax by Frankie Goes to Hollywood, pretty much, gave them a real boost really, and a bit of attention. So
infamy, they've all got it, infamy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Famously said.
Yes. And so the second album, 30 Something, was released in February 91, and it got critical acclaim, and it got to number 8 in the charts. But it's an absolute fan favourite. I think you and I would both say it's got to be one of our favourite albums.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the gigs non-stop, really. I mean, I went through their gig history, and if I read that, we'd have 2 episodes just to fill it all in, the amount they did. I didn't realise how much they played in Europe. I mean, every country you can imagine, they were there all the time. Gigs, festivals, everything, constantly in Europe, everywhere. Did a lot of stuff in Germany and Holland, but everywhere. And then in June of 91, they re-released Cherish Fat Man. Now this time it got some real attention, and it hit the chart at number 23. So they were starting to get a bit of a trajectory at this point. They then went off to the USA, and they shared a bill with EMF. They played a first tour of Japan. And in August, they made the first appearance at Reading Festival, second on the bill below James, a band I love.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Then later in 91, this is when things get interesting, they released a single, After the Watershed, in brackets, Early Learning the Hard Way, a song about child abuse that gave them their first of many Top of the Pops appearances.
The reporter said, loved you to death after the watershed. Between the open university and closed down, you were dead. He'd wand your cockles with his magic tricks. Glasses, bottles, filter tips. John Player special number 666. From the family's firm, who's about to be taking twisted turns to give ya French kisses and Chinese burns. You see, she had a skinful and she couldn't stop, like a pit bull in a china shop. And all the king social workers, the gurkers and the cops somehow couldn't love you back to life again now. Black eye for a black eye, a chip tooth for a chip tooth, a fraction of a half life, some housework and some home truth, and nothing but the home truth, nothing but the home truth, nothing but the home truth. And goodbye, Ruby Tuesday, come home, you silly cow. We baked a cake and your friends are waiting. And David Icke says he'd like to show us how to love you back to life again.
Now the lyric, Goodbye Ruby Tuesday, caused a legal battle with the Rolling Stones publisher. And the Rolling Stones placed an injunction on the song, which resulted in it being pulled from airwaves and distribution, which obviously, again, the infamy doesn't hurt them, does it? But even more interestingly, on this particular song was, did you watch this live, the Smash Hits Hot Poll Winners Party?
I remember seeing it, yeah. It was, at the time, it was sort of quite shocking, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I looked back at it the other day on video. I'm like, wow. So what happened was the presenter, Philip Schofield, now disgraced, I should add, was really derogatory and sneering about them before he introduced them. So if you watch it back now, you can see that Fruitbat is rightly wound up. He's kind of bristling right from the start. So when the backing track was turned off before it was finished by the production crew, Fruitbat went mad and kicked over a load of the speaker stands. Then Schofield made more sarcastic remarks and more sneering, and Fruitbat went over and rugby tackled him to the floor. Now, the net result was the band was temporarily banned from performing on TV, but ticket sales soared. After the demise of Rough Trade Records in 92, they signed to Chrysalis Records. And in January, the single Rubbish was re-released. Now, prior to the new album, the single The Only Living Boy in New Cross was released with a great video. It gave them their highest charting single, reaching number 7.
Hello, good evening, welcome to nothing much. A no holds barred half Nelson and the loving touch, the comfort and the joy of feeling lost, with the only living boy in Ukraine. Another hall of hotel towels and toothpaste and the bathroom wall. Wipe the lipstick parts and flowers from the glass and crow. Take 5 or 6 odd baths and showers and come on home to the comfort and the joy.
Great song, eh?
That's a great song. Yeah, it's certainly obviously. I mean, it was their highest charting, but great song.
So in May that year, they released the third album, 1992, the Love album. It went straight to number 1 in the UK charts, so straight in and entered at number 1. Imagine that. Now, this is interestingly, what happened after that was that because it went straight in at number 1, it drew the attention of Michael Eavis, the guy who obviously ran at that time Glastonbury Festival, and he offered the band to close the Pyramid stage on the Friday night of the festival that year. However, it wasn't quite the dream they hoped. Other bands overran. They forced Carter's set to be much shorter than they'd planned, and by the end, Fruitbat in particular was furious and he slagged off the festival. So what happened was, backstage, Michael Eavis was livid and he came into their dressing room and had a blazing row, and as a result, Carter never played there again. And then they released the single Do Re Mi So Far So Good, and later in the year, The Impossible Dream. And in September and October, they played 30 dates in the USA and Canada. So then we move on to 1993. They toured Australia and Japan. And that was followed by another USA tour and their third Japan tour. So they went to Japan quite a lot.
Yeah.
Then they released one of my personal favourite singles, which got it at number 16 in the chart. That was Lean On Me, I Won't Fall Over.
Should get away from London town, causing chaos and delay on the underground. I'll read your letter as I pass away the time, stuck in a tunnel on the Hammersmith and City line. Oh yeah. I'll hurry home, a little bored, still alive. Unblock the phone to keep the outside world outside. I'll take some aspirin, then I'll take myself to bed. You'll be gone and you'll be dead, all because I never said lean on me, I won't fall over. I'm made of steel and stone cold sober. If you feel the need, come over. Lean on me, I won't fall over.
So that was followed in September by a typically great album, Post-Historic Monsters, which entered number 5 in the albums chart. It was followed by the single Lenny and Terrence. Now, Post-Historic Monsters, for me, is probably my second favourite album by them, personally.
Second to
30-something, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Then in 94, one of their mates called Wes joined the band on drums, and they released a single, Glam Rock Cops. And they performed playing Croatia in Zagreb, and that gig is later released on a video. And that year in July, they played at Phoenix Festival, where I saw them, along with another one of our podcast bands, the Buzzcocks. And then in November, they released the excellent Let's Get Tattoos, which we played at the start of this episode. Now, at the start of 95, they released a single, Young Offender's Mum, and in Feb, they released the album Worry Bomb, another great album.
It is a great album, actually, one of my favourites, funny
enough. That reached number 9 in the UK album charts. That year, Chrysalis effectively signed the death knell for the band. So, they've just had 4 number 1 albums, right? That last album came in at number 9, so it's still a top 10 album. Then Chrysalis, what they do is they released a singles album. Now, that pretty much tells you your time with the label is over, doesn't it? And indeed it was. The album was called Straw Donkey, and it was one of many compilation albums. And it actually, in terms of compilations, there's been loads over the years, live compilation and so on. But you and I both have the big 12-inch box set of all the vinyl, everything we ever did on vinyl, which is great, isn't it?
Yeah.
In 1996, Carter left Chrysalis Records, as we heard, and joined Cooking Vinyl. Now, 3 members joined: Salve on bass, Wes's brother Steve on guitar, and Ben Lambert on keyboards. And in 97, they released a mini album called A World Without Dave, and started the longest ever UK tour before returning to Canada and USA. I think that's where we saw them in Northampton.
Yeah, how interesting. Yeah. That has got my favourite song of Carter of all time, which is And God Created Brixton Too.
It's fantastic.
It's on that album.
It's
just another one like Billy Smart Circus, where every time you listen to it, it feels like it's the first time you've ever heard it.
Unfortunately, by this time, they're being kind of drowned out by the tsunami of Britpop, really, that was engulfing the whole country. It's almost like everyone thought their sound was of the past, although it wasn't. People's attention was elsewhere, shall we say. So they decided to split just after their 10th anniversary, but they did release a final studio album called I Blame the Government, which was released in Jan 1998.
Okay, wow, that's something. What happened afterwards then?
Right, so Les formed the band Abdu Japarov. Okay, now it's named after. Now, do you remember Les used to, when he's in front of Fruitbat's image, was always wearing those cycling hats? Is very much his image. I thought that was just a thing, but I think he kind of likes cycling because it's named after a Uzbek professional road racing cyclist who was really well known and well feared. Actually, he was known as Tasket Terror around in the early 90s. So his name was Jalmuddin Abduparov, and they had 6 albums and 15 singles so far, actually.
Because I think they're still going, aren't they?
They are absolutely still going. Yeah, absolutely still going. And then Jim formed Jim's Super Stereo World, and then he moved on to solo albums in the name Jim Bob. He's done 14 to date, and one of the great songs by Jim Bob, in my opinion, is A Song by Me.
If I accept your cookies, will you fill up my feed with a little positivity? I think that it's needed. No more arguments alone and beating up the wrong guy, fighting on the beaches of Bournemouth and Bondi. No thanks. All this negativity is getting us nowhere. We're tired and we're numb and we're bored and we don't care. Ruined and consumed by the shocking and graphic, emotionally crippled, almost sociopathic or something.
Show me videos of babies looking here for the first time. They're wrongfully imprisoned, stepping into the sunshine. A soldier coming home from war, a bacon and dark day. A simple act of kindness from somebody because they care. Oh, fucking yeah. Every day I hate myself and taking it.
So Jim has also written 9 books, both in the name of Jim Bob and J.B. Morrison. So just to finish, one little note about Carter. They did split, but they did actually do a couple of gigs. Well, they did every couple of years. They did a gig at Brixton Academy just to like keep their toe in as the band. And they did 2 final farewell gigs in November 2014, dedicated to the memory at this point in time of John Fatbeast.
All right, Noel, that sounds brilliant. What a great run through. Thank you so much. That's really useful. Well, why don't we now hear from the man himself? Let's have a chat with Jim Bob. Right, Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me on here.
In your book, you seem to grow up in quite a musical family. And I just wondered, was it always, were you always destined to become, a musician, to write songs and be in a band?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's the reason why, because basically my mum was a singer. Like before I was born, she's kind of, when she had children, she had a singing career before that, and she was in like a close harmony group that sung on. I mean, most famously, she sung on the early version of the Morecambe and Wise show, and Stanley Baxter and Benny Hill. She was on the Benny Hill show, so they'd be like the group. They'd have like a singing group in the middle. They have a musical act in the sort of middle of the show.
Yeah,
she did that and sort of touring, but as I say, that was before I was born. So I suppose there was always a certain amount of music in the house probably because of that, and my dad was he was a stage manager again before I was born, so he was kind of in the sort of arts business, I suppose. And then I had an older sister, so I tended, and she would have her friends would come around to the house, and also her boyfriends, and I tended to like the first music I remember really being into was the music that she listened to and her friends listened to. So I think that so probably my older sister was probably the biggest influence, or rather her friends, I think. And then from there, I kind of, I don't know, I don't know why I suddenly decided that this is what I wanted to do, but I know it was quite early on. I know it was like, maybe 13 or 14. I know I was sort of, I definitely had that idea then that I was going to be in a band or something like that. And I started writing songs when I was 14, like awful songs, like when I was 14. Or I'd say 14. That's the kind of, I've always thought it was 14.
So what were those early influences? What was those sort of records that your sister had? What were they that they influenced you?
Well, it was, I mean, I sort of got quite vivid memories of ska music, the kind of Desmond Decker and things like that, with this sort of, I think I was probably only like 9 years old or something like that. So there was a lot of, and they were sort of, so her friends would have been not skinheads, but I think they were smooths, they called them. So it was the kind of, the skinheads with the slightly grown out hair. But
bit suede head.
Yeah, suede heads, that kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of, definitely that music I remember then. But then as I got older, like one of them, my sister's boyfriends was really into rock music, just that was around in the 70s. So I got into that. I mean, there was stuff in between, but the things I remember was being into things like Bad Company and Supertramp and anything that the records that he owned and brought round to the house. But these things sort of happen quite quickly, don't they? So one minute I'm into that, thinking, oh yeah, that's what I like, and then I meet someone at school and he's into rock and roll music, and then I've sort of become a teddy boy when I'm like 13 or something, and start dressing like that, and then being into Eddie Cochran and Buddy Holly and Bill Haley, and then I don't know, sort of, and then you kind of move very quickly, and then sort of later teens it just gets completely out of hand and makes no sense because everything happens in a year, doesn't it? You sort of from punk to new wave to mod revival, and everything's sort of going on at once. It's definitely that sort of period. When I think of that, like sort of 1978 and 79, something like that, where I think, I really liked punk music, new wave music, and I think, actually, and modern romantics was around that. That was around that time as well, wasn't it? And I definitely liked, I liked Spandau Ballet at the beginning, and the latter sort of, well, not latter, but Skids around that time of Absolute Game, when it was sort of crossing over into that sort of, it was slightly new romantic-y, wasn't it? Even though they were originally a punk band or whatever.
We spoke to when we spoke to the Passions, the guy we spoke to, he used to be in a band called Spandau Ballet, which had two gigs in London. Then they disbanded, and the Spandau Ballet we all knew sort of nicked their name and used it for themselves.
Oh, that's amazing that there were two Spandau Ballets.
Yeah. Like, not a lot of people know that.
No, I didn't know that. Yeah.
No, we only knew through the podcast, but yeah, it was interesting. Very interesting. Yeah.
Because I was when Carter, I mean, jumping ahead, but when Carter first formed, our first gig, we were called Bob, and I don't know why we were called Bob. We were called Bob, and we had to change our name because there was another band called Bob who were already kind of more active than us, and we found out about that because our drummer from our previous band we just split up was the drummer in the other Bob. So all this sort of, it's quite a coincidence, I suppose.
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? I heard that obviously when you'd met Les, you met him at a rehearsal space, but then at a point he came to your sister's party. So did he sit quietly in the corner and no one noticed him, or what really happened?
I think I've got the feeling that's in that book, isn't it? It's in one of my books. I definitely mentioned that. Whereas it's probably one of those anecdotes I might have exaggerated, but the way I remember it was that he came to the party. So I think I'd met him. There was this amazing rehearsal studio in Streatham in South London where it was kind of like a cross between a youth club and just everything. It was a real sort of fun place to hang out, and there were loads of bands and loads of different musicians all in each other's bands, and and then going to the pub together, and everyone was on the dole, and it was sort of it was just a great place. And so I met him there, and I think he was in 3 other bands or something. So the way I remember it is he joined the band. We had a practice or whatever, and then maybe that day or maybe a day after he came to my sister's party. And what I remember was going downstairs and he was on the doorstep kissing my sister's best friend. And I don't know. Later on, that seemed kind of pertinent to the whole situation. I don't know.
I love that. That's great.
Because a lot of your early recordings, I think, were done in like a mate's garden. Well, what was that set up then?
I mean, the first 4 Carter albums, so that's like chart albums, including the #1 album, were all done in a garden. I mean, a garden, not even a garden. It wasn't a garden. I mean, it was a garden shed. It's just that it was built out of bricks, but you couldn't get a car in there. So it's basically when we split up Jamie Wednesday before Carter, we'd sort of made a kind of quick decision that we were going to use like tapes rather than look for a new band. I think we had a gig already organised. We had a gig booked as Jamie Wednesday at the Astoria in London, supporting the Men That Couldn't Hang. And rather than say we couldn't do the gig because we'd split up, we thought we just won't say anything. And then formed Carter, or Bob as they were, and just had like 2 weeks to write a couple more songs and then record some. I think we were going to use a drum machine, but we ended up recording like a drum machine and bass and a little bit of synth. And so we just looked up a local studio in whatever we would have looked at, Melody Maker or something like that. I don't know where it would have been, and went to the studio. And it was in those days when studios cost like £1 a track. So if it was an 8-track studio, it was £8 an hour. If it was 24-track, it was £24 an hour. It was I missed those days. I mean, obviously now it would be £6,000 an hour, wouldn't it? Because endless tracks. But so we went there and we did a demo. Basically, we might have done the backing tracks first before the demo, and we did some backing tracks there. And the bloke who ran the studio was called Simon Painter. And then we went back there to do a demo, and that's where we recorded the first 4 albums with Simon in his, like I say, it was just you couldn't fit a drum kit in there, so that was fine. And there were it was split into 2 rooms, so you had the mixing desk in one room and the recording live room but it was tiny, and that's kind of, we just never felt the need to go anywhere else. Just sort of, it got slightly more expensive because we were getting more successful, but it was kind of made it such a, I don't know, we just enjoyed going. We'd cycle there. We didn't live that far away, and we'd go to the baker's and get a sandwich every day. And sometimes Simon would be doing more recording than we were, but it's just sort of a good way to. And it was only because we got a drummer that we felt the need to go to a bigger studio. Otherwise, I'd probably still be there now.
That's amazing. So we mentioned Bob and you mentioned Carter.
Yeah.
Now I think I read somewhere that you intended to kind of change the name on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Did you have any others lined up that were in the pipeline?
I honestly can't remember. I mean, we were going to keep the Carter bit. It was the Unstoppable Sex Machine. That bit was going to be the changeable bit. So we do, like, we'd be Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine, and then we do another gig and we'd be Carter the something or other. Just kind of. But I don't think we ever had any more because we never got further than that first one. So I don't know. Maybe when we did a, because ridiculous. I don't actually. I know when the first gig was, but the first gig we were Bob. So I don't know when the first Carter the Unstoppable Sex Machine gig would have been. Probably at the Cricketers in Kennington, or I met Order Clarendon in Hammersmith, because that's those two places we played a lot.
Or Supporting the Last, maybe that one.
No, that was a little bit later on, because that was reviewed, wasn't it? That was at the George Roby. This is the George Roby. I don't know if you remember that. The bill, I think the Lars were the headline, and then I think we were on maybe in the middle, and then it was They Might Be Giants were also on. Which is quite a bill now, isn't it, for a pub gig?
Wow. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I remember we got a really bad review. I think we got a bad review from I think it was Adrian Thrills, who was a fan of Jamie Wednesday, and he just didn't like what we'd become.
Right. Yeah, I get that. So moving on to Carter, right? I was going to ask you about. I really love this video. Anytime, any place, anywhere. Yeah. So obviously, years later, Ian Brown rode his little low rider backwards through Soho, and obviously you'd done it years before, walking backwards with your guitars. But it looks like you had to contend with loads of drunks on the street. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, it was pretty. It's the kind of thing now I would not do. I would have thought, I wouldn't have wanted to do it then. But now I would say, no, not doing that. But because I think we probably started in the morning, like with videos would sort of take a whole day, So we were literally walking backwards with somebody holding the playback, and just miming to the song, walking through Soho and going through Berwick Street Market and that, and getting annoying the market traders, getting really pissed off with us. I remember that. And as the sort of day wore on, then it got dark, and then people around going through Leicester Square, I think, was one of the worst bits, because everyone's drunk and sort of running up to us. And I do remember Les being possibly quite drunk as well, because he kept stopping off to go into pubs in between, like when they were changing tapes or something. He'd pop into a pub. But it creates a. I mean, another bit I remember about not just walking backwards, but because they wanted us to look. I can't remember how this works. Because they wanted us to look sped up, and obviously that'd be easy now. But then, so I think we had to mime to it at half. Would it be at half the speed, half the speed, so that when they play it back, it would be like we'd be sped up, but still in time with the vocals or whatever. So walking backwards through Leicester Square, surrounded by drunks, miming, singing along to a song that's playing at half the speed was pretty mental, really.
when the 30-something came out, one of the people who was promoting it and raving about it was Jonathan King, the Radio 1 DJ. Really uncool. Got to say, not the most cool DJ ever. Did that feel like a bit of a blessing or a curse to have his support?
I mean, at the time, it was kind of. I mean, at the time, the only thing about him was he was a sort of kind of ridiculous figure, wasn't he? He wasn't controversial, and he hadn't been arrested for anything yet. So I think anybody knew was, he's that idiot off the telly. So it was a kind of blessing and a curse, I suppose, because we did get publicity from it. He would put us in magazines, and he put us on that Wembley gig that was on. That was his thing, when we did that thing with The Cure. That was Jonathan King's gig. He was like the head of would have been the Brits then, wouldn't it? I suppose, wasn't it the BPI or whatever? So, but I remember things like once we did a gig in Paris and he turned up at that, and it was like, oh god, Jonathan King's here again, and we played. Actually, it might have been that gig at Wembley. We hid in this is true backstage, hid in a wardrobe because he wanted to talk to us. So it was that kind of, we were sort of running away from him a lot.
So on the subject of DJs, so I don't think John Peel was a fan of yours. The song Rubbish, which is about rubbish on the radio, you have a little clip of him. So was that kind of to make a point of some sort?
No, I mean, what happened there is, I mean, there's two sort of stories with that, is that we wanted Morecambe and Wise doing What Do You Think of the Programme So Far? And I can't remember, because when we used to use all the samples we used to use then, we just used to put the tape recorder in front of the telly or the radio, wherever they would come from. We didn't, it was kind of pre-samplers, I suppose, or in that I think they existed, but we didn't have one. And I can't remember why we couldn't get it. Maybe we didn't have a video, or it wasn't. So, and then just purely by luck, I think we'd recorded it. I can't remember how we got it. For some reason, we got a recording of a John Peel show where he coincidentally said that. So we thought, this is even better. This is better than Eric Morecambe, because it's sort of, So that's why we used it. And then when we played Reading Festival, we did an interview with John Peel.
Oh.
And it was he sort of told us that he didn't like us, but now he liked us more because of that. And I think possibly that's the one and only time he ever played us on the radio. But he didn't like us, no.
What do you think of the programme so far?
Notes, the elms end with busted lights and dodgy plates, scrawled with a ballpoint pen. RUBBISH, I'm underage and uninsured, on the high road to the Mestos, Flora, Carvalor. I'll meet you down by the litter bins, stretch my fins to beat my face, wait there till my ship comes in, load it down with toxic waste. I'm going now to meet my maker, ignition drops, accelerator, mirror signal and maneuver, glory, 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 hallelujah.
It's funny because we've spoken, obviously, a lot of the bands we've spoken to, a lot of them have had John Peel sessions, and they've all said, I would say almost exclusively, that having a session and having that support gave all the bands like a complete boost. Yeah. So obviously not for yourselves though.
No, I mean we had Steve and Matt a bit later on, but I suppose we were already doing okay by then. But I mean the way I remember it from sort of with Carter is I don't feel like we had much support from anyone, apart from it was pure audience based up to a point anyway, up to a point where people had to join in, so we didn't really get reviews, and we didn't get a lot of press. We didn't get, I think like Gary Crowley used to play us on the radio. I reckon he was probably the first person to play us on the radio on, I guess that would have been, I don't know, Radio London or LBC or whatever it was called then, I don't know. So we didn't get any of that, and we just kept getting more successful in a kind of doing gigs, sort of the gigs more people would come to the gigs. So it always felt kind of quite pure, and we didn't feel like we owed anybody anything. It just sort of apart from the audience, which was, but yeah, so we didn't. Turns out we didn't need John Peel.
It's interesting because your brand now, post the band, it feels, I don't know how it feels for you guys. For us as fans, it feels like it's almost stronger now than it was back in the day. Your merchandising, your what you've done is it's got a really strong brand to it. I don't know if that's like something that is something that you've chosen to do deliberately.
No, I mean, in terms of like with the, I mean, we were always like with t-shirts, we were always, we were kind of known as a t-shirt band. They used to call us, and
Yeah.
and the myth was that we sold more t-shirts than we did records. And that wasn't true, but we did. We sold a lot of t-shirts, but I didn't. But it's only, but in the sort of more recent years, it's sort of you'd think it wouldn't be able to sell t-shirts now, but it's definitely. I think it's people have got. Maybe they get to you get to a certain age and you decide what you're going to wear, and you think, and those are the clothes you're going to wear for the rest of your life, or and it might be clothes that you wore at a certain point in your life. And music as well, to a certain extent. You'll find you might listen to some new music, but you'll always listen to the same bunch of records from a period of your life. So I'm guessing people are just replacing their old clothes, maybe. They liked having the 30-something shirt, but it's it's faded, so I'll buy a new one. Luckily, we never sold our like a lot of bands sold their kind of rights to their logos and their images and that, which we never did. So that's, yeah. I mean, otherwise, I don't know what I'd be doing now, because that's kind of kept me going financially at difficult times.
Yeah, no, it's so good. I've got a couple of the running tops, and if I go to a park run, and there's always somebody with one of those tops, another one, and it's almost like we're in a club. In the Carter, the Unstoppable Steps Machine Club, and you just sort of gravitate towards each other. It's and you never met them before, but you suddenly spark up a conversation.
I mean, a lot of it, in fact, almost all of it has come from our manager Mark Hollington, who's him and mainly his wife runs the merch, the Carter USM store.
Yeah,
and he's kind of he's a runner. So that idea came from him with the running, thing. But he's like he organised the park run thing at Shine Festival. And that was like a lot of people in car shirts. But yeah, so it's things like that surprise me, constantly surprising, because he said, we could do these running shirts. And I was like, then, why is anyone going to want to buy a car running shirt? But, happy to be proved wrong.
Okay, let's go back to when the '92 The Love album got to number one. Where were you? How was that for you?
We were on tour, as we sort of so often were then. I mean, the annoying thing about it now is I remember it. I mean, it was great, but there was the element of us feeling that we knew it was going to happen that almost spoilt it as a sort of thing. Sort of. Because it was expected, that it was going to happen. So when it did happen, it was all, almost got in the way of us trying to get on with gigs in a ridiculous way, which is, like now that seems ridiculous. But when things start to become expected, it's like there was a point when we used to they put us on the front cover of the NME, and we didn't want to be on the front cover of the NME because we felt we were being, overexposed or whatever. But before that, the idea of being on the front cover of the NME just would have been so exciting. So I think that's the one bad thing about it. But obviously it's great, I'd say it's better now for me now to say, oh yeah, I've had a number one album than it was then. If you know what I mean. The same as like headlining Glastonbury. It's better now to say I've headlined Glastonbury than at the time. So, oh, we're headlining Glastonbury. Oh, do we have to, sort of thing.
So on Glastonbury, obviously we know about the story about how bands overrun and it didn't go well at the end. One thing I wanted to ask about that specifically was, so I'm just trying to imagine, right? So you're sitting backstage, the band that's on before, whoever that is, they're still going, and you're like, well, hold on, we're due on now. So hold on, they're still going. We've got to knock off a song quickly, and knock it off the tape machines or whatever. Hang on, they're still going again. Got to knock another one. You're literally on the hop, I imagine, having to bit by bit quickly adjust. Is that how it went?
No, it was. I don't know if it was kept from me or us. But I mean, I don't think we knew that we were going to have to drop any songs until it was the encore that we essentially dropped. I think
Right.
I think they were telling us to get off before we'd finished, and we were kind of oblivious to that.
Wow.
And then when we went off, we were going to come, and I think that we were going to come back on, and we were going to rather cheesily play our new single and maybe a couple of other songs. I don't know. And they said, no, you can't go back on. And that's kind of what happened. So so almost if we knew before we went on, it probably would have caused less of a ruckus. It was just the idea of them saying, no, you can't do it anymore. And it's like, we haven't finished because I mean, everyone knows like encores are fake, obviously, but so we knew we were going to do one. So we planned a whole thing. So, yeah, it's just that kind of, that idea that and that just led to arguments with various people there. And obviously then Michael Eavis came and had a sort of go at us and so on, yeah. And then, yeah. And I hope I haven't just, because I've told the story quite a lot, I hope I'm not starting to I'm just like, my memory of it is just my story and none of this happened. But it is, I do generally kind of remember that that they wanted us out, kind of. I mean, we've said thrown out of the festival, but I think realistically thrown out of the backstage part of the festival. So I'm sure they didn't take us to the 2 miles to the gates.
Yeah, by the collar.
Yeah, but then we were thrown out of a festival the next day as well. We genuinely were thrown out of a festival the next day. So we're on quite a roll.
Oh, wow! Because didn't you have some sort of cannons on the side of the stage full of like polystyrene balls or something to promote Do Re Mi? Yeah,
that's the thing. We had that, which that's the bit I'm confused. I mean, because I haven't got a full recording of it or anything, so I'm not totally sure. Because they would be. I'm guessing they would be fired when we were playing Do Re Mi. But my memory of it is that we didn't play Do Re Mi. But it was at that time of our sort of as a band that we would sort of come up with ridiculous ideas for stage shows, and that was. I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to drop them from a helicopter, but they couldn't get permission from ground traffic.
Traffic control.
Traffic control.
Yeah.
To fly a helicopter and drop 3,000 soft balls onto. So we weren't allowed to do that. So somebody came up with this idea that you can get these cannons to fire. So we ended up doing that, and got slagged off in the press because it was because they weren't biodegradable. I think that was it went against the ethos of the festival.
Right. Okay, so moving on to Post-Historic Monsters. Now, for me, I love the album. Love it. One of my favourite albums. And yet, when I sort of do a bit of research here before we had a chat, it seems to be sort of not negativeness, but an almost like a view on the internet, at least, that you were trying to prove yourself, or you had critical disdain and you were trying to do something different. I didn't see that. I just thought it was just another great Carter album. But what is the truth there? We were
definitely we were probably at our kind of most I don't know, we were always sort of quite angry, I suppose, to a certain extent, but then I think it was where we first started to get a bit of pushback from the record label, maybe, about what we were doing and what we should release and that kind of thing, which we didn't have before. So I think some of the songs definitely even if they're not on the album, some of the B-sides we did around then are almost like having a go at the record label and the music business, whatever. So there's that sort of thing to it, and there's a sort of, I don't know, it's kind of I don't know if cynicism. We were quite, there's that sort of whereas before I felt like the songs were kind of, with that is the first song, isn't there? When it's got that bit about if love is the answer, what was the question? It's kind of saying, oh no, love's not good enough. Let's go out and kill some awful people or whatever. Which that felt like that was the mood we were in, I suppose. And there's some of the songs that are on there, and they're probably more personal as well, because we sort of, what do you write about when you're sort of, when you start out writing about things happening in a local area, and when you're on the dole, and then by that point you're sort of, you're flying to Japan from America or something. What do you write? Do you just carry on writing about that? I don't know. Yeah. So I guess there's that. But for quite a long time, it was always my and Les. It's probably Les is still me. I don't know. Favorite Carter album. So It does. It's a great. I mean, it's got a great sound. I love the sound of that album.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Love it.
And still done in the garden shed.
It's amazing, absolutely amazing. To move on to Worry Bomb, so that album, I want to ask a question because it came to mind to me. Which has anybody ever said to you, "I kind of disagree with something in your lyrics"? You know, actually, I think Landlords are great, or Norman Tebbit was wonderful, or has anyone ever actually said to you, "I disagree with something on the lyrics"?
No, I mean they do now. Definitely do now. People rush into anything you say now. You can't. Yeah. Well, either that or they misunderstand what you've said. I don't remember that. I do remember. You know, we definitely had songs that were misunderstood, taken at absolute face value. You know, like so. You definitely had so say a song like Bloodsport for All, which was clearly an anti-racist song. There were definitely racists who liked that song, and that's we definitely I mean that's the sort of best example of that, I think. But I don't remember anybody. I don't think people had that. I think if social media was around then I'm sure countless people would have told us what they disagreed with. But I don't really sort of remember. No.
So the reason I asked was because there's a lyric that I disagree with.
Okay. Until now. Yeah.
But it could be on my own, and I could have misunderstood it. And I think I'm on my own. But I really like airplane food.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Wow.
I know it's pretty sad, isn't it? But there you go.
Are you vegetarian?
No.
Oh, I mean, mine's purely based on being a vegetarian.
Oh, I got it. Yeah, okay.
Especially around that time, the choices for vegetarian food would just be, it was always unrecognisable. It would be like, what, sort of, so I don't know, they hadn't worked out if they could just give you a cheese sandwich or something, I don't know. But yeah, so I think it was that. We would, on a lot of flights and a lot of disappointing food. I've just remembered one thing that somebody did disagree with on the 1992 album. There's a line in the song England where I sing that like a Jehovah's Witness, you'll be born again and again. And a Jehovah's Witness confronting me at a gig to tell me that Jehovah's Witnesses aren't born again. They don't believe in that.
I was born under a wandering star in the second council house of Virgo, forcibly removed from the belly of my ma and raised on milk and Pernod. So just lie back and think of England. 'Cause I've slid down banisters for judges and barristers, readers, wives, husbands with toothless decay. I've been GBH'd and ABH for a packet of B&H. I've been taken and I've been driven away. I was fornicating before I could read or write, and now I can't stop, sir. I graduated from the University of Life and the School of Hard Knocks, sir. And my telephone, it's always ringing, and my number is XXX directory. Call 089 833. Talk dirty to me. Come on, you unfaithful, joyful, triumphant, and pathetically weak. I've been Amsterdam, Reaper Bam, Wham Bam, no thank you, ma'am. If the spirit is willing, then the telephone is cheap. And if you wanna step outside, love, you can step outside, love, with me. You can step outside with me. Don't care when. I'm gonna help you with your sickness, like a Jehovah's Witness. You'll be born again and again and again. Just lie back, close your eyes and think of England and what England's done for me.
So Worry Bomb then got to number 9, and then the record label dropped you. So what did that go like? How did they justify that?
Do you know? I don't remember that. I don't remember how they dropped us. I think it was. I feel at that time it was quite mutual because we'd gone from we did. I'm guessing it was number 9, but maybe it wasn't as successful as the other albums. It was definitely sort of. But so with the obviously, so you got your first album is on like a really tiny label, Big Cat, and then the second album's on Rough Trade, and they go bust. And then we signed to Chrysalis, and the deal we had with Chrysalis was such a great record deal, and it was kind of, I mean, it was sort of like a large independent label, and it was very much, we could pretty much do anything we wanted to do. It was a total, complete control thing. So I think by Worry Bomb, I'm guessing they sold it to EMI, so that everything changed, and it was, suddenly we were being, everything we did was questioned, and it just wasn't. So I think it was, by the time we left, there was probably a certain mutual element to it that we were kind of happy to go. It's weird. I've got no memory of leaving the label.
So I read in NME a Carter review back in the day, and it said it was just when Wes joined, and it said the first line was, "Whoa, Carter have got a drummer," and I just wondered if how that did it change the sound at all, and and that sort of evolution.
Yeah, I mean, because the reason that it happened was there were a couple of things that we there were a couple of sort of specific things I remember that we supported Madness on tour, and the tour was, I think, all sold out before we were announced, and we didn't go down well, to say the least. And there was that gig, and then there was a gig we supported Duran Duran in San Francisco, and at that one, I think the sound, Duran Duran went on before us, even though they were headlining, and then all the technical people left after they played, so there was no sound engineer, and everything sort of went wrong. And because of those two things, Les thought that those gigs would have been so much better if we had control, if we could have just basically played as a band rather than reliant on a drum machine and tape machine. So that's kind of why it happened. It was like Les's idea. So basically we had to, obviously Wes had to play a lot of the like pretty fast sort of drum beats and stuff. So there was that for him to learn. And then the whole click thing, we didn't really play to a click or anything, whereas he had to have a click in headphones, and then we had to rely on him. So there was all those sort of timing issues that were always a problem before, but then became a different sort of thing. So yeah, and then recording, obviously it's completely different, because before we just sit there in a garden shed with and just get start the drum machine, do some sequence bass, and then just kind of add to it. Whereas now we had to kind of learn songs and play them kind of like a band. So there was that, and I don't know, and then it's sort of, I think the way I look at it, the way I see it is, especially with hindsight, and that, I think what the Worry Bomb onwards to me is like a different band. It's still Carter, but it does to me in a way it isn't. If you kind of see what I mean. So it is, but it isn't. I don't know. It's almost like we could have changed our name or something. But and then and then we get 3 other people involved, and then it's all downhill from there.
But no, obviously it was Sal and Steve and Ben. Obviously, they had a whole other dimension to it as well. So
yeah, it sounded great. That's one thing we did. With some of the gigs we did, it definitely sounded better to us. Because for whatever reason, I guess it was just because before it was just this everything coming out of these 2 channels. Because we didn't like, for most of our sort of time just when it was me and Les, we just had a left and right of starting with a cassette, then onto a DAT. So it was only when Wes joined that things were split up. So that obviously is going to affect the sound, and the sound engine could do a lot more with it. So that, I think that improved the sound, but then maybe, I don't know, eventually we kind of lost something of of the original idea, which was just being able to do anything we wanted to do.
So when Wes joined, the three of you did something pretty, I'd say it must go down in pretty momentous in the history of Croatia. I guess playing there, being the first sort of band to go over and play there after some of the troubles. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we were the first. I think because we ended up in an argument with the Godfathers, because I think they'd been there, definitely been there before us.
Ah, right, okay.
But I don't think we ever said we were the first. I think it was the enemy did or something. I don't know.
Right.
But I suppose it was because we went there. Because we went there twice, and basically we went there the first time we played all over. At the time, it was kind of still Yugoslavia, but it was sort of becoming the former Yugoslavia. So we played in Bosnia and played in Zagreb and Maribor. I can't remember where else we played. And did these kind of fairly small gigs, but like when we got to Zagreb, it was like, I don't know, it was a really big deal for the audience, and we played in this sort of quite big club outdoors, and it was in the war was just kind of, there was war sort of going on, so we did it, and there were armed guards at the side of the stage and that. But it was all, I mean, at the time, it was all that sort of stuff's exciting, isn't it? And then we went back to play a gig to like 6,000 people or something, and it was on television, and their equivalent of the Croatian FA Cup, the ball boys all wore Carter shirts and all this. It was quite a sort of big, I think it was exciting, but I think part of it was like a tourism thing. I think, we were sort of met with, there was like a stretch limousine, like an old fashioned sort of American stretch limousine, and a press conference, and pretty bizarre. So that was when Wes was in the band, and I don't think he'd been in the band that long, so it's even more exciting for him.
Incredible. You wrote "And God Created Brixton," and I believe it was after a lock-in in a pub. Can you tell us about
that? It was Les's birthday basically, and he lived in Brixton, and there were a couple of pubs where we often had just seem to get to know publicans. I think there were a couple of pubs where we were always having lock-ins. And one of them was George IV, and by Brixton Prison. So I think it's a Tesco's now. Like probably half the pubs are Tesco's now. So he had his birthday in there, and then there's like a back room there where he had like, I think about 5 bands played. And what we didn't know was while this is going on, there's like a Brixton riots going on outside. So we didn't sort of know. I think maybe a couple of people came in late and said, there's stuff going on outside, and we were sort of, I don't know, just enjoying ourselves really. And I think it was when we left, I remember leaving with my girlfriend, and went outside, and they were like, streets sort of empty, but like smashed up cars, police sirens, and we kind of missed it. So it had gone on outside while we were, it was probably like, it's probably like a quarter of a mile away from the actual heart of the riots, but they've definitely gone on outside. So so I wrote that song about that, just to turn it into a sort of love song.
I walked from my baby's Brixton flat into a riot. I thought of maybe turning back till things were quiet, when all the buildings to be burned had been burned, and all the cars to overturn were overturned. Outside the prison they were screen testing the free. Open auditions for closed circuit TV. Your baby brother would be there outside the jail, throwing bottles as the police sirens wail.
So the very final gig. So tell us about the after party for that final gig. I believe a tribute band actually played at that party.
I mean, what we did is, because every time we did those reunion gigs at Brixton, there would then be like an after show at Club Jam, sort of just down the road a bit. And sometimes like Les's band would play, or a couple of times the Japanese Carter tribute band were flown over and they played. And I think I sung a couple of times, but quite sort of incredibly drunk usually by that point. So that would have definitely, so there definitely were people who were there. They would have stayed there till, whenever that ended at 5 or 6 in the morning.
And a Japanese tribute band, that's particularly great. I love that.
Clinton USM, they're called. They still exist. Because they're both kind of, they're like office workers, and sort of they've got this band. Yeah, it's sort of like lovely sort of guys, and they don't, like, neither of them really speak English, like hardly at all. So they've learnt the songs kind of phonetically. Yeah. So they're like lyrically just none of it makes any sense. It's just sort of sounds almost, a lot of it. But yeah, there's stuff from them on YouTube. It's pretty amazing. And it was just just so they got flown over to play at the Brixton Jam after, which was sort of great after seeing us and then going and watching the Japanese version.
You must have made their day to go and sing with them then.
I did. I sung on one. No, I think I went on. I guess the second time they played, I went on stage quite drunk, walked on stage, and they were sort of. I mean, I think the reason why they existed, I think they were just really big fans. So I think it freaked them out a bit that that I walked on there, sort of. But I was kind of glad I did it.
So from your solo gigs then, your solo career post-Carter, you've been incredibly prolific, particularly in the last like 5 or 6 years. Yeah. You've released, at least 6 albums that I can know of, 2 of which were on the same day last year. I mean, I'm not sure where you got that idea from, but how are you so prolific? I mean, are you just in a rich vein of songwriting form?
I mean, because I think maybe because I don't play live that much really. So I've obviously got more time. And the only time I wasn't writing songs was when I was writing books, and I was, so I think about 7 years where I didn't write songs, and I thought, well, that's it. I'm never going to write any songs. I didn't think I could, and then I wrote a novel, and it finished, and I'd finished that, and then I think I started trying to write a song. And what often happens with me, if I get in, I find it really difficult, but if I get into a flow, then I can keep going. And sort of, so I'll write an album. So say I might write enough songs for an album, and then say it's going to be 12 songs. When I've written the 12th song, I can't write a 13th song. There's never any bonus material with me. I mean, it wasn't really with Carter either. And just with sort of in the recent years, because I've sort of had a live band, so I had people to record with other than just me, and so I sort of wanted to go and record with them. I kind of wanted to do it, and and just sort of, if I get into that, like I say, I get in that zone, and but I also feel like it's what I should be doing it in a way, for sort of. I mean, it's kind of commercially, it's a suicidal sort of thing to do. Like putting 2 albums out in one day was a stupid idea, it turns out, because it just confuses people. But I'm glad I did it, and I didn't think, that's it, I better stop now. I've carried on, and I sort of just lately, literally just the past couple of months, I wrote a song and put it on the internet straight away, and I thought just film me doing it acoustic, and I feel like doing more of that, just as just throwing things away kind of thing, because I write songs and then do some demos at home, and then I wait a little bit of time organising, recording, and then record them, and then wait for them to get mastered and all the rest of it, and by the time they come out, to me they're almost, I'm on to something else. So but yeah.
Are you a look forward sort of guy then, or as opposed to looking back? Are you? Is that something that you don't tend to do too often?
Yeah, I mean, when I'm sort of like, I'm happy to talk about Carter and, you know, whatever. And when I play live, I play probably half Carter songs. But I mean, I've sort of, if I was honest, I question myself if I thought, if I didn't have to play Carter songs live, I wonder if I would, you know what I mean? Because I play them because I know that's, a lot of people want to hear that. And it's sort of, you know, good songs, I'm happy with that. But I wonder if I would, you know, because for every Carter song I play is one new song that I can't play well, you know, so, but I don't know, I haven't had to think about that because I'm quite happy doing, because I went through a period when I was just doing, all my live gigs were just acoustic, just me on my own. So when I started doing that, I was doing almost all solo stuff, and then a couple of Carter songs, and then about half and half. And at some point, I was just doing Carter songs because it was more popular, and it meant I could, you know, get more people into the gigs. And so yeah, so not that long ago when I sort of stopped doing that, I've gone back to the half and half thing. So, you know, who knows? You never know. They might do something solo that might take off in a big way and have a whole, you know, load of 16-year-old kids come and see me. And
does it impact where you can play? Does it impact on what promoters go for as to whether you have that mix of songs?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think if I said, yeah, I mean, there's a kind of level I'm at where there's certain venues I know I can play, and you know, a lot of them what people call grassroots, and they're supposed to be on a rung to a ladder, but to something else. But I don't see it like that. I see that's for a lot of people. That's the end. That's the goal, isn't it? If you can sell, I don't know, if you can play to 300 or 400 people or something, then that's good. That's success enough, isn't it? You know, you don't have to think, oh yeah, but in the future I might play Wembley Stadium for 12 nights or something, and I'll hate it, you know, but I'll be, you know, get more money or whatever. So when I first started doing solo, when I used to do solo gigs, when it was just me, I'd always be billed as Jim Bob from Carter USM, and it would usually have the Carter logo. Which now I've reached that stage where I don't have to. That doesn't have to be in there. You know, it might be. You know, people might put it in. You know, it might be on a ticket website. It might say from Carter USM or something, but it's not in the posters. It's not in the artwork anymore. So that's sort of. I feel that's I've achieved something there because you know, maybe just people know who Jim Bob is now. Because I wrote another book, Jim Bob from Carter, which was sort of about that idea that I would always be Jim Bob from Carter. But I hear it the most ridiculous, because, you know, like people become that, don't they? They're somebody from something. And I have heard on more than one occasion Paul McCartney being referred to as Paul McCartney from the Beatles.
Oh God!
just in case you don't know.
All right, look, let's think about. So I know we talked about looking forward, looking back. What's if you had to have a favourite memory? You can have two, actually, okay, Jim, because that's the sort of people we are. So what's your favourite memory from the Carter years, and what's your favourite memory from the Jim Bob years?
I mean, there's sort of, because I've said it quite a lot about the Carter thing, that I sort of struggle to think of any sort. There's probably. I mean, the obvious one is when we played Reading Festival in 1991, you know, we were like second on the bill to James. And it was just at the point where everybody there seemed to like us, and we couldn't do anything wrong. Right. And it was just that, and everything about that gig was like perfect. And just sort of remember things like, you know, the sun set during one of the songs, and it just felt like there wasn't a person there. This is what it felt like, you know, that didn't think we were the best band in the world, you know, and this was the best gig to be at. Just that whole moment, and that arriving backstage and sort of being back there in the bar, and kind of people wanting to talk to us, and that, it just, yeah, didn't sort of ever get any better than that. There were those sort of great earlier moments, you know, when like getting into the indie charts and all those sort of things were always exciting. But that was that felt like looking back, that feels like the peak of the the top bit. From there, it started to get more like a job or more disappointments and everything, you know.
And Jim Bob years?
Jim Bob. I'd like to think it hasn't happened yet. I don't know if there's any. I can think of one thing because it's fairly recent, and it's sort of it kind of harks back to the Carter #1 album thing. As when I'd been to a family funeral, and I was on the just released we released like an EP only a couple of years ago, and been to a funeral and just was on the way. Actually, I think of two things that are connected. And on the way back from the funeral, me and my partner had stopped in, parked up in Sainsbury's just to get something. And I got like a phone call from Mark, manager, saying, that, guess where it was in and it was basically the EP was number one so it's the physical charts, the indie charts, and the, I think, shop charts, whatever they call that. Oh no, the vinyl charts. And the thing is, we didn't consider the charts at all and hadn't thought about it. So when he said, guess where it is, I don't know what, and I sort of said, oh, I don't know, because he wouldn't be ringing me if it wasn't. So I said, I don't know, what is it? Is it top 20 or something? They was like, no, number one. So I remember that's like things like that when it's unexpected. And the same with the when I did the sorry, I've given you three, but it's connected. It's the pop-up Jim Bob album, which is like the first album I'd done for 7 years, and that going to, I think it was number 26 in the charts. And again, that was, like the real charts. So I'd gone from being like nothing and almost given up on music to that. And that was just, again, a surprise. So I just love things when they're like surprises.
All right, look, brilliant. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you. It's
Jim.
absolute pleasure.
Really, really appreciated. I hope we haven't been too obvious. I haven't even asked about whether or not playing with Les would lead to another Carter reunion.
We'll get a mark on it, don't worry.
No.
We'll twist your arm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Didn't even ask that.
I used, before we reformed, I used to say, I remember I famously for me, said, I would rather eat my own legs than reform Carter. And then we reformed Carter. So you never know, do you?
All right, look, lovely. No, thank you so much for your time. It's been so good.
Cheers.
Okay, cheers. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Now, as you know, we do our research from a variety of sources, but if you want to add any more detail for us or even correct us on anything, then please do get in touch with us. Where can they get in touch with us, Noel?
They can contact us on our email address, which is unchartedsoundspodcast@gmail.com.
And of course, you can also get in touch with us on our Facebook group, the Uncharted Sounds group, as well as our Facebook page, the Uncharted Sounds page. And of course, you can also contact us on our website, www.uncharted-sounds.co.uk.
And once again, thanks to Crashland for writing the theme tune specifically for our podcast.
Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.